All right, we are going live. So hello, everyone. This is Chris Berry with Castle Wealth Group. We do these webinars each Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And it's really a chance where if you have questions, you can get your questions answered as it relates to legal, financial, and tax planning. And I always like to start with positive focus, something positive that's happened. And this week, or actually just yesterday, we celebrated my son's 11th birthday. His birthday isn't actually till next week, but we'll be traveling, and so we wanted to get family together. So my son Ryan is turning 11, and he had a wonderful birthday. So that's my positive focus. Now with that, I'll go ahead and share my screen. And like I said, if you do have questions, please put it into the Q&A section or the chat. I do have two questions that were submitted ahead of time, so I will go ahead and address those. And if you want to see how this applies to your situation, feel free to schedule some time on my calendar by going to www.15.chris.com, and we can set up a short little phone call to discuss. But with that, let's go ahead and get into, I didn't mean to do that. Good thing we can always undo it. And let's go ahead and get into the two questions we had. And again, if you do have a question, either related to what we're talking about today, or you have a different question, feel free to put it into the chat or the Q&A, or if something I say is unclear, please let me know. All right, so a question submitted was, is a TFRA right for me at my age, and how do they work? So definition time, TFRA, you might see this floating around on the internet, tax-free retirement account. So what is a tax-free retirement account? Well, most likely, it's not really a term I use per se, but most likely what it's referring to is cash value life insurance, and more specifically, index universal life. So we need to understand that there's different tax buckets. We have taxable, tax deferred, and tax-free. And taxable accounts are like your checking, savings, your brokerage accounts. Tax deferred, IRAs, traditional IRAs, 401ks, 403bs. This money is pre-tax, and you're taxed on anything you pull out of here is taxed at your ordinary income tax rates. And then tax-free, we have our Roth accounts, and then we have cash value life insurance, typically index universal life, 529s, and health savings accounts. So with a couple things. So taxes, and we've been talking about these really since like 2015, if not sooner. The big reason was the federal deficit, the amount of debt this country has. Prior to 2020, it was at about $22 trillion in debt. And now we're approaching $30 trillion in debt. So a lot of people think taxes have to go up. And then second, we have the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that runs from 2018 to 2025. That says in 2025, taxes are going up about 3 to 4% across the board, which means the value of these accounts go down. So, and I'm trying to give you context of why this is so important. But a big thing is just a lot of people are worried about taxes going up in the future because of the debt, because of the way the current laws are, and then even President Biden's proposals. All of these things have the potential of raising income taxes. So if taxes go up, the value of these tax deferred accounts go down. Because I had a review meeting with the client today, and right now they typically, with their Social Security and everything, they make they need about $100,000 worth of income per year. Well, that's going to put them in the 22% tax bracket right now. And when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expires, that's going to the 25% tax bracket. So what we've been doing the last couple of years is filling up this 22% tax bracket by pulling out another $70,000 out of the tax deferred account. And that brings them up to the top of the 22% tax bracket, about 170,000. And then we're actually going to the 24% tax bracket, filling that up, which takes them to about 326,000. So we're pulling about 226. Well, let me do this over here. We're pulling about $226,000 annually from their pre-tax accounts and moving it over to something that's tax-free. And so we can't do that to a 529 or health savings account. Instead, we look at Roth or IUL, or it's also called tax-free retirement accounts. And there's pros and cons of each depending on the situation. But with a Roth, the money is going to be in the market, kind of going up and down. Tax-free retirement account or IUL, it's tied to an index where if the market goes down, you don't lose anything. Plus another benefit, so this is the IUL. Plus another benefit with the IUL is that death benefit that you might not be super excited about could double as a long-term care benefit. So I'm not saying tax-free retirement account or IUL is better than a Roth. They're both tools. It's all about figuring out what are your goals, develop the best strategies, and then pick the right tool. So, and typically there's two ways that we kind of deal with this. One, and it really depends on, are you in a accumulation stage in your life versus preservation? Okay. Really what I'm talking about here is, are you saving still? Or are you retired or close to retirement? Okay. So if you're accumulating, think about where you're saving your money. Too often, and I see this all the time with people coming in for retirement, they saved everything here. Now they've accumulated everything in this tax deferred account, and they look around now that they're retired and, oh my gosh, I'm in the same, if not higher tax bracket than while I was working, especially if taxes are going up in the future. So if you're still working, think about where you're saving your money. Don't overfund that traditional 401k, leaving yourself a big tax problem at the end of the day. Instead, fund maybe a Roth and fund a tax-free retirement account. Okay. Create tax diversification while you're saving. So while you're accumulating wealth, while you're saving, if you're younger and still working, don't overfund that traditional 401k. Always take the employer match, but then look to other areas to save money, maybe into a Roth, or you might not be able to save into a Roth. Then you could then for sure look at that tax-free retirement account or index universal life, the same thing. This is just more of a kind of like a marketing internet term for it, or a slang term for it, is tax-free retirement account. Really all it is cash value life insurance policy, where the accumulation of the growth grows tax-free, and it's tied to insurance, so it has this tax-free nature to it. And then if you're close to retirement, then we look at ways of moving money, paying the tax on these pre-tax accounts, and then moving it over to tax-free, whether it's Roth or IUL. Sat down with some wonderful clients yesterday. They have a lot of accumulated wealth, millions inside of the pre-tax accounts, and they see this tax train coming down the tracks, and they want to remove as much as possible. And they don't have a lot of cash sitting here. So doing Roth conversions where you pay the tax out of the taxable account isn't as feasible for them. So instead, we're withholding and moving the money to IUL. Because they want a much more tax efficient retirement. And by doing this and doing it sooner rather than later, they're actually going to get to a 0% tax bracket. So that if taxes double, even if 12 goes to 24 or something like that, 2 times 0 is still 0. So I'm not saying everyone can get to that 0% tax bracket in retirement, but I'll tell you, as I'm accumulating wealth and saving, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm saving as much as I can over here. Okay, so I have a Roth, I have a tax-free retirement account I'm saving, I have a 529, I have a health savings account. And then if you're close to retirement, it's what can we do to get money out of that tax deferred account where we know if income taxes go up, the value of that account goes down, especially given that we have this window of opportunity where we know taxes are lowered unless President Biden's proposals go through. So again, I think taxes are one of the biggest risks and biggest opportunities right now. So what is a tax-free retirement account right for you at your age? we'd have to sit down and figure out what are your goals, figure out the best strategy to help you achieve the goals, and then see if that's the right tool. Because again, we get a lot of requests like, should I do a castle trust, or do I need this tool or that tool? Starts with what is your goal, and then figure out how to, what strategies to help you address that. Okay. Here's a question coming in. Have a SD IRA with, self-directed IRA. Have to take 2020 RMDs. Can I write checks directly into my kid's college from as part of a RMD? All right, so let's answer this question now. So the question is, we have a self-directed IRA. Self-directed IRA is you basically have more control over what you can invest in. Like people invest in real estate, and you could do like even crypto coins inside of a self-directed retirement account or a self-directed IRA. You could have businesses in it. There's a lot of, it can be a little complex. And so you have self-directed IRA, you have to take out RMDs because that happens once you turn 72. And the question is, can I write a check to college as part of the RMD? Well, I guess it really doesn't matter. So it's not like writing a check to your kid's college would be a qualified charitable distribution. We're using all the acronyms today. So a QCD, qualified charitable distribution, is when you have RMDs that you have to take out, but you send that RMD, instead of coming to you and you pay taxes to it, you pay taxes on it. Instead, what you do is you send it to a charity, and now you've made a charitable gift, and it's an above the line deduction. So even before your standard deduction, it kicks in. So paying your kids college would not be a qualified charitable distribution. So hopefully that's not what we're trying to accomplish there. I don't see an advantage of writing the check directly to the college. So the answer is yes, you can pull out the RMD, pay the tax, and then you could pay for a kid's college with that. So hopefully that answered your question. I might need some more clarification. Another question here. Who is a good candidate for a Roth 401k if it's offered? All right. So the question is, who is a good candidate for a Roth 401k if it's offered? So employers in the past typically would offer what's called a 401k, or you might see a 403b if you're working for nonprofit or schools. Both of these are tax deferred. So we would call this like your traditional 401k. And then a lot of times on top of this, there'd be some type of match offered by the employer. Well, what's happened within the last couple of years is now they've offered a Roth 401k, and the Roth 401k is post-tax money that now grows tax-free. So the question is, who would be a good candidate for that? Right now, with where I think taxes are going, I would say just about everyone. I would say if you are currently working, you're accumulating wealth and you're saving, see if your employer offers a Roth 401k. The downside of it is that the downside of the Roth 401k is you're paying the tax now. So some people are saying, well, if I'm working now, my taxes are going to be much lower in retirement. But I can almost guarantee you across the board, people are surprised by how much tax they're paying in retirement, because you lose a lot of the common deductions you had while you're working, like mortgages and kids and all this. And then you factor in Social Security and then your RMDs. And like I said, I've said this before, but to generalize, a majority of my clients while they're working are in the 22 to 24% tax bracket. So making, as a married couple, between $100,000 to $326,000 a year. Now I have clients that make more, I have clients that make less, but I would say a hefty portion while they're working fall in that category. Well, guess what? When you retire, a majority of my clients are falling in the 22% tax bracket right now, which is between 180,000 and 170,000. So if you're in the 24 or 22 while you're working, and then you're in 22 while you're retired, your taxes aren't that much less while you're working. Now, yeah, because you're still in basically the same tax bracket. So if you think taxes are going up now, I would rather pay the tax now and then put it into the Roth. So yeah, I don't do this often, but I would say just about everyone should be looking at that if you're working a 401k Roth option. Now the match that the employer offers, that would still go in the traditional 401k, but that's free money. So you always take the free money. Okay, so you get the free money that goes into the traditional 401k. Okay, that's good. Free money is always number one, but then the rest of your savings will now grow tax-free. So I don't say this often. Usually I say it depends, but who is a candidate for a Roth 401k? I'd say just about everyone, and see if your employer offers them. There's something that's relatively new. Here's another question. So in a market downturn, a great time to convert deferred IRA to Roth. Should we do dollar cost averaging? Is it a chance to do some good during downturn? Yeah, okay. So the question is, so let's say we're thinking there's going to be a market downturn or one has happened. So market downturn, and we have an IRA. Is that a good time to convert to a Roth? Yeah. Let me see. I actually have a tool I use for this this analysis to describe it. So let's say we have an IRA, and let's say it's $1 million, and then let's say last March happens, and everything drops like 20%. So now the slinky has shrunk. Well, now is an opportune time, and it's kind of counterintuitive. A lot of times we say don't sell during a downturn, but now if we were in XYZ mutual fund and it was at $100,000, actually, let me, let's say we were in like XYZ mutual fund and it's valued at $1 million, and then it drops to 800,000. Let's do a Roth conversion. And now if we keep it in an XYZ mutual fund and it rebounds back to $1 million, we now have $1 million tax-free, and we've only paid tax on the 800,000. So yeah, a market downturn is an awesome opportunity to do things like Roth conversions or pulling money out of those tax deferred accounts, moving it to something tax-free, and now getting all that growth tax-free. So yeah, like last March when the pandemic hit and everything was down for a month, if you just moved to cash and you sat there, you missed the rebound. But if you did like a Roth conversion of saying, okay, you know what, everything's down, let's do a conversion, and then let's invest aggressively again, or at least in the same thing you were in, that would have been a perfect time to do something like that. I don't like to get into market timing too often, but yeah, if we see the market drop 20%, hey, that's a perfect time to do a Roth conversion. Or at the very least move money from the tax deferred while it's at a discount and then move it into that tax-free bucket, or even taxable. Anything's better than tax deferred. So again, tax deferred IRAs, 401ks, not the most efficient from a tax perspective for your retirement. And then with that Secure Act, it's the last thing that your kids want to inherit. They'd much prefer to inherit tax-free money. And then even now with President Biden's proposal of getting rid of the step up in basis, kids don't even want to inherit taxable money because they might be taxed on the gains if they were to lose that step up in basis. So again, if you're looking at which tax bucket is the best tax bucket to leave assets to the next generation, tax-free is number one, tax deferred is number three, and taxable is number two. And then really estate tax-free would be number one, but you get the idea. All right, and here's the last question I have. And so if you do have any questions or you want me to clarify anything, please put it in the Q&A or the chat. So this last question is, I'm named as a successor on my parents' financial and medical power of attorney. They both have dementia. How do I get involved? Okay, so this is why we always, as much as possible, when we're setting up these documents, like a financial power of attorney or a medical power of attorney, we call these our disability documents. You get a knock on your head, who's going to make decisions for you? A lot of times we name spouse first if you're married. But we always want to have a backup, because what happens if something happens to a spouse, then we need to have someone else involved. And let's just say kid, right? So in this situation, it sounds like both spouses have dementia, meaning mom shouldn't serve for dad and dad shouldn't serve for mom at this point. So the question is, how do we get them removed so now the child steps in? Really, there's three ways. One, so how to get them removed and how to have that child now serve so that that child can get involved and work with the banks and financial institutions. One would be, just because someone has a dementia diagnosis, that doesn't mean they're completely incapacitated. That doesn't mean that they don't have authority to make decisions or that they have lucid moments. So one is, we could have the spouse sign an affidavit to step down, that they're resigning. So basically the spouse signs off to say, you know what, I'm going to resign. And it doesn't even have to be because of dementia, it could be for whatever reason. Maybe they just don't want to serve anymore. So you have mom and dad and both are starting to deteriorate a little bit. Mom's named as dad's power of attorney. Mom could just sign off and say, you know what, I'm not dealing with a checkbook anymore. I want someone else to do. And so they would resign. And then automatically with that resignation, then the next child or the next person in line steps in to serve. That next person would then have to sign an acceptance, meaning they accept that role. But that would be the easiest. Second way would be having two doctors say that the person is incapacitated. Okay, that's a typical trigger in these documents. Okay, let's say mom's already in an assisted living, very clear that she doesn't have capacity to manage her affairs. Then we can have the physician at the facility and one other physician at the community sign a document to say that in their opinion, this person doesn't have the authority to, or doesn't have the capacity to serve anymore. Then with those two doctors' letters, that's the trigger to now have the child step in and serve. And then of course the child would still have to sign accepting that. And then the third way would be going to court. Okay. This is basically suing mom and dad to now have the court name you as the person to act. Obviously, we don't want to go that route. That is I call that the nuclear option. We're always trying to keep people out of court. So typically what we're doing is, first, number one, if there is still capacity, and if there's truly not any capacity, then we'd have the two doctors sign off. So that's the trigger. And then, so that gets the spouse removed. And then all we'd have to do is have that child accept that. Sometimes what we do also, because financial institutions are horrible at working at these things, you walk into a bank or talk to Fidelity one day, they tell you one thing, you talk to someone else the next day, they'll tell you something else. Something that we also do if we're having problems at the banks is as the attorney for a client, we'll have a letter drafted up and I'll sign an affidavit saying that I'm representing them as their actual attorney. Here's the situation. And here's who the current acting power of attorney is, because these banks and financial institutions are always in like cover my butt mode. They don't want to get sued because someone moved an account around. So they're always looking to cover their butt. So a lot of times they make it kind of difficult, even if we have well-drafted documents in place. Okay, so yeah, I've named successor, both had dementia at this point. How do I get involved? Yep, so that'd be how we get involved. Either have the spouse resign, Get 2 doctors, say the person's incapacitated. Worst case, we get the court involved. So hopefully that was helpful. All right. Another question just came in. What is a QLAC? Okay. We're doing all of the acronyms today. So QLAC is a qualified longevity annuity contract. What is a QLAC? How does this reduce RMDs until age 85? Basically, what we're doing is, to be honest, I've never done one of these. But if I'm not mistaken, what we're doing is we're basically creating an annuity for you. And then if I'm not mistaken, we're having that go to the insurance, or not the insurance company. We have to use an insurance company because they're the ones that use the annuity. But if I'm not mistaken, then the balance at death goes to a charity. I'd have to take a look at it. But again, that's why I was trying to figure out what the goals are and then get into the tool or strategies and then the tools. So it's just a tool that, to be honest, I haven't used. All right. MDs don't like to make competency decisions. What about a competency committee? So this is getting back to, whoops, I erased the question. Did I erase the question? Yeah, I did. So this is getting back to the question of how do we get someone else named as that financial power of attorney? We have the spouse, and then we have the kid. And the comment is that doctors don't like to make that competency decisions. I guess maybe your primary care doctor, but a lot of times in these like assisted living, and they're pretty quick to make that decision. But the question is, could we have a committee? Yeah, and this is something a lot of times we include in our trust. We include what we call a disability panel. So if like we have spouse, and then let's say we have 2 kids, if they all raise their hand to say that, hey, maybe dad shouldn't be managed his affairs, then that could be a trigger under the trust to have the next person step in line. But yeah, we haven't had a problem with doctors signing those affidavits. Either that, but typically what we'll do is if the person does have any type of capacity. So again, you don't go from like healthy to completely incapacitated. A lot of times there's a gray area, but the a lot of times we'll just have them step down on their own. Worst case, we have we have to get the 2 doctors involved, and we've never had to go to court in situations like that. So, all right. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. And sold. All right. Well, everyone have a great week. It was a pleasure. Oh, I have another positive focus. I'm going to be on vacation next week, so we're not going to meet next Wednesday. So hopefully you all miss me, but we will be back on the 18th. So thank you, everyone. Make it a great week. Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, another question just came in.